I invented a rape to hide an infidelity. Now I've lost my husband, my friends, and my son thinks his dad hates him. When my partner found the pregnancy test and knowing he was sterile, he asked me who the father was, and I told him I'd been raped. That was the first lie. From then on, everything fell apart. I know that sounds terrible. I know how it sounds, but if I didn't, I'd lose everything. I'd lose the only man who made me feel safe, who took care of me, who saw a future with me. And I couldn't afford to lose that for a single mistake because yes, I admit it was a mistake. But does one mistake deserve to destroy an entire family? I was 24 when it happened. Andres and I had already been living together for a year. He was 25, and everything I ever wanted. Calm, sweet, stable. He treated me like a queen. He even washed the dishes without me asking. A rare man. One of those you don't find twice. That night we argued, I don't even remember why, something stupid. But I was upset, vulnerable. And just then Luna, my best friend, invited me to a party. I don't usually accept those things, but that day I needed to clear my head. We went to a small apartment, low music, drinks. And there he was, my ex, the guy who ruined me when I was 19, the one who taught me what it was like to feel desired and then abandoned. We locked eyes. It was awkward, but after a few drinks the ice broke. We talked. We laughed. I'm not going to justify it, but I felt seen again, and between drinks, glances, and that adrenaline I hadn't felt in years, we ended up in his car. It was quick, meaningless. There were no sweet caresses or anything romantic, it was just sex. And as soon as it was over I felt dirty. I hated myself. I swore to myself I'd never tell. I went back to Andres as if nothing had happened. He hugged me, apologized for the argument, even brought me chocolate that night. I pretended everything was fine, and for weeks it was until I started feeling weird. Nausea, chest pain, late period. I went to the pharmacy, bought the test, and took it while Andres was working. Positive, I froze. In my country, abortion is illegal. No options, no escape. I thought about everything, leaving, lying, disappearing. But while I was trying to process it, I made the stupidest mistake. I left the test in the bathroom trash. Andres found it that same night. He came into the room with the test in his hand, trembling. His face was a mixture of rage, fear, and disappointment. What's this? I froze. Are you pregnant? I couldn't even speak, I just nodded. How's that possible? He asked, his voice breaking. I told you I'm sterile since before I met you. You cheated on me. And that's where everything fell apart, or was built depending on how you look at it. I didn't think. I just acted. I told him that 2 months ago, when I went out with Luna, something horrible had happened, that I'd been raped, that I hadn't told him out of shame, out of trauma, out of fear he'd leave me, that I was in therapy, that I didn't know how to face it, that I tried to be strong but I couldn't anymore. He looked at me, not knowing whether to believe me. Then he asked, Does Luna know this? I nodded. Let's call her, he said. My stomach tightened, but I had no choice. I called her. I whispered what she had to say and she, though hesitantly, covered for me. Yes, Andres, she said over the speakerphone. It was horrible. I was with her that day. We didn't know how to tell you. Andres broke down. He hugged me.
He cried.
Forgive me for making you feel alone in this, he told me. I didn't know you were carrying so much. I don't want to lose you, I told him between sobs. You won't. That baby isn't to blame. I'm going to raise him. He'll be my son. And so it was. From that day on, Andres became a new man. He took care of me like porcelain. He made me herbal teas. He talked to my belly. He read to me softly every night. He chose the name Matthias. And I started going to therapy for real, not because I believed my lie, but because I had to uphold it. Because if I faltered on a word, I'd lose everything. Matthias was born and Andres cried. He cried like I'd never seen him. He held him, he loved him, he protected him. And even though everything had been built on a lie, for the first time in my life, I felt loved, complete, protected. I lied out of fear, but I managed to have the family I always dreamed of. For years, that lie gave me everything the truth would have taken away. Matthias grew strong, happy. He called Andres dad, as if he'd been born with his blood. And Andres adored him, never doubted, never questioned him. Every photo, every birthday, every hug convinced him more that he was his son. And if from time to time I had to look the other way to maintain that illusion, didn't we all do that? We got married a year after Matthias was born. Small ceremony. Andres cried as I walked towards him. He looked at me as if I were his salvation, his miracle. I no longer felt guilty. On the contrary, I felt useful. He couldn't have children. I had given him one. Didn't that, in a way, make me his redemption? Time passed, and my life stabilized. My friendships became more distant, as happens when you become a mother, but I still had contact with Luna. Our friendship had changed. Since I asked her to lie, it was never the same again, but she never threw it in my face. Or so I thought. 2 years later, Luna married a man I always thought was mediocre, controlling, jealous. I never understood what she saw in him. She said he took care of her, that he made her feel safe. I only smiled on the outside. Inside I knew that guy would end up destroying her. But it wasn't me who destroyed him, it was me who pushed the first domino. That night we went out to a friend's party. One of those few times we managed to leave Matthias with a babysitter. Andres came with me. We didn't go out much, and that night, I admit I drank too much. The conversation revolved around infidelities, gossip, laughter. And then, without thinking, I blurted out. Well, Luna is no slouch either. The silence was immediate. A friend tried to save the moment. Ha, you're so silly. It's a joke. No, obviously, I replied, trying to laugh. I was just joking, but it was too late. Luna looked at me with a mixture of disbelief and contained rage. The night went on, but the atmosphere had chilled. Andres didn't say anything, but I noticed he was tense. Days passed. I thought everything had ended there until Luna called me. Not with her usual tone. Not with my friend's voice. I want you to fix it, she told me. Fix what? My marriage hasn't been the same since that night. He interrogates me, watches me, accuses me. Do you know what it's like to live with someone who thinks you betrayed him? Because your best friend said it in front of everyone. Luna, it was a joke. Everyone knew it wasn't serious. Well, he didn't. And if you don't fix it, I swear I'll destroy your marriage like you did mine. I was speechless. You're not serious? You think I can't? You think I'm going to let you walk away calmly after what you did? I tried to calm her down. I told her we'd talk in person. She hung up. From then on, her marriage began to crumble. I found out through social media, through mutual friends, through the silences. I tried to talk to her husband. I sent him messages. I asked him not to take what I said seriously. Never, he replied. And shortly after I found out they had separated. I wanted to call her, explain, apologize, but it was too late. The argument started. Tense message exchanges, silences, accusations. Because of you, I'm alone. It was a stupid comment. I didn't think he'd take it that way. You never think about anyone else, only yourself. I thought that no matter how much harm had been done, she would still be my friend, that she would let it go, that she would understand. I was wrong. A month after her divorce, Luna kept her promise, and I had no idea that what was coming was going to be much worse than I imagined. It wasn't immediate. Andres didn't confront me with shouts or break anything. On the contrary, he sat across from me in the kitchen one afternoon, elbows on the table and hands clasped as if it were a formal meeting. Matthias was playing in the next room. There was silence, a dense silence. Do you and I have a secret? He asked me. The air left me in a gasp. How? I tried to sound casual, but my voice came out broken. Is there something you haven't told me? Something about Matthias, for example. I felt my heart pounding in my ears. I didn't know how much he knew. I didn't know whether to deny, to flee, to attack. What are you implying? Luna looked for me. She told me Matthias isn't the son of a rape, that you lied to me, that you slept with your ex that night, and then invented everything for me. My vision blurred. Are you going to believe her? She's upset because I ruined her marriage. She told me. She warned me. That's what I thought, he replied firmly. That's why I didn't believe her at first, but she gave me a name, your ex's. He paused for a few seconds, then blurted out, I contacted him. I froze and he answered. The world closed in on me. And what did he tell you? He told me he was with you that night, that it was consensual, that you sought him out, that nothing was forced. I didn't answer. I couldn't. I'm asking you just once. Did you lie to me? I could keep lying. I could deny everything. But Andres's face, that devastated face, but still asking for one last truth, broke me. I nodded. I told him everything, or at least what was necessary. I told him it was just once, that it was after a fight, that I felt alone, confused, that I didn't know what to do when I discovered the pregnancy, that I was afraid of losing him, that I lied out of love. Out of love, he repeated with tense lips. You lied to me. You manipulated your best friend to uphold a false story about a rape. Out of love. You don't understand, I replied in tears. You couldn't have children. I gave you one. And you can't say you don't love him. You gave me a child from another man as if it were a consolation prize. Do you realize how sick that sounds? But you raised him. You love him. It doesn't matter where he came from anymore. Yes, it matters because all of this, what we lived, we built on a lie. A lie that made us happy. I screamed. That doesn't count for anything. He looked at me. Not with hatred, with something worse, indifference. I can't even look at you right now, he said, and went to sleep on the sofa. I thought it would pass, that it would be one of those long fights, that with time he would understand, that he would remember everything we had lived. But the days passed, and he didn't come back. Andres complied with everything related to Matthias. He woke him up, dressed him, took him to his classes, but with me, silence, dry messages if necessary, nothing more. I tried to talk to him several times. I tried to get into his bed at night. He would close the door. He told me he couldn't sleep near someone who had used him like that. And that's when real fear began to take root. One night, I couldn't take it anymore. I spoke to him in the kitchen, as if I wanted to repeat the moment he confronted me. But now I was the one pleading. How long are you going to keep this up? I'm not acting. I'm making decisions, he replied. What decisions? I'm going to divorce you. I felt myself fall. You can't do this to me. I laughed without joy. I'm doing this to you. We're going to therapy. I'm fixing things. I'm going to therapy, he corrected me. You're just trying to avoid the consequences. And Matthias, are you going to abandon him too? He's not my son. That's not true. You raised him. You love him. And I'll continue to love him, he replied almost in a whisper. But that doesn't obligate me to stay with someone who destroyed my life. The next day, he handed me the divorce papers. I panicked, and then I did the only thing I knew could still hurt him. I used Matthias. I told him to call him, to record audios for him, to tell him he missed him, that he loved him. Dad, don't you love me anymore? I sent it. Andres didn't reply. I sent it again. Nothing. And after 3 days, I realized he had blocked my number and Matthias's too. It was then that I knew I was truly losing him, and I couldn't even imagine what would come next. When I received the court summons for the divorce hearing, I thought it would be just another formality. Andres no longer lived with me, but he still saw Matthias intermittently. I still believed I could win him back, that deep down he was still the sensitive, empathetic man who had hugged me when I first lied to him, but this time he came prepared to kill me without raising his voice. At the initial hearing, he filed for formal divorce and the division of the savings fund. I, of course, requested child support for Matthias. I argued what was obvious. Andres had raised him from the womb, had given him his last name, had enrolled him in school as his father. Even though he wasn't biologically his, he had acted as a voluntary father from day one. And that legally counts. The judge asked for proof. Andres, with a serenity that hurt, presented his medical certificates, irreversible sterility since he was 18. He had said so from the beginning of our relationship. He wasn't lying. I, for my part, showed screenshots of messages, birthday photos, school records, everything that could prove that Andres not only accepted Matthias, he loved him as a father. The judge postponed the decision. Hearing adjourned. 2 weeks to present new evidence. And that's when things really started to break. A few days later, the school called me. A psychologist wanted to talk to me urgently. When I arrived, they led me to a small room with the principal and a woman who introduced herself as a child psychologist. Matthias has been having anxiety episodes in class, she told me. He has cried without apparent reason. He has said things that worry us. What things? I asked, feigning surprise. The psychologist scanned her notebook. He has said phrases like, "I shouldn't exist. My dad doesn't love me anymore because I was a mistake, and my mom says everything is everyone else's fault." I remained silent. "Is there anything you want to tell us, ma'am? Has something happened at home?" "We're going through a complicated process," I stammered. "A separation. He knows his father isn't his biological father." "Of course not." I almost screamed. "He would never know that from me." The psychologist looked at me with a mixture of caution and judgment. "Matthias needs urgent stability. He's at a very vulnerable age. I recommend you seek psychological support. Not for him, for the whole family." I nodded, but inside my blood was boiling. Andres was hurting my son with his coldness, and the world was blaming me. I tried to contact him again. I sent him messages, emails, I even used a friend's phone, so he wouldn't block me immediately. Nothing, not a word. I told him Matthias needed him, that he was suffering, that he could fix everything. Silence. By that point, my parents already knew everything. My friends too, or what was left of them. The audio Luna had saved, one where I begged her to say it had been a rape, had started circulating among acquaintances. WhatsApp, alumni groups, even a couple of neighbors heard it. They didn't know all the details, but they knew enough. A friend who works in an HR office sent me a private message. "Don't use my name, but they're talking about you in the internal group. They say you faked a rape. Be careful." I was being singled out, and the worst was yet to come. A week before the next hearing, Matthias's birthday was approaching. As a good mother, I organized a small party at my parents' house. Few people, something quiet. And yes, I invited Andres. He accepted. Only for Matthias. When he arrived, Matthias ran into his arms. He shouted, "Dad." It was the only happy moment of the whole afternoon. Everything was relatively fine until one of the mothers from school, who wasn't even close, approached Andres and in front of everyone blurted out, "So you're the one who raised another man's son believing it was the product of a false rape." Silence. The kind of silence that kills. Andres stood up. He looked at me with a distorted face. Matthias, seeing the attention, started to cry. "Dad, what's wrong?" "Nothing, son. Nothing." Andres said, swallowing hard. "Are you leaving?" "Yes, but I'll see you soon." And he left. Matthias kept crying. He came up to me, hugged me tightly, and told me, between sobs, "Mom, this is all your fault." And then I knew I had lost everything. My husband, my son, my reputation, and in a few days I would lose much more. The day of the final hearing came like a sentence. I no longer slept. Matthias had stopped asking about his dad. Now he just drew him silently, sadly, with words he said to himself as if trying to convince himself. "Dad loves me. He's just angry." I listened from the hallway. It broke my heart, but what could I do? I no longer had any tools, I just had to resist. When I entered the courtroom, Andres was already there in a suit, impeccable, as if the pain had made him colder, more distant, more calculating. He didn't look at me. I did look at him, looking for some crack of weakness, of love, of doubt. I didn't find it. The judge opened the session. Each party presented their final arguments. Andres filed for formal divorce, half of the shared savings. And again, he declared that he did not wish to pay child support because Matthias was not his biological son. My lawyer counterattacked that Andres had raised him from the womb, that he had recognized him as his own, that he signed as a legal father knowing of his sterility, that Matthias knows him as his only father and that, therefore, he should assume responsibility. Everything was balancing out. I even felt the judge beginning to lean towards my side until Andres asked to speak. "Your Honor, I have a witness." The judge raised an eyebrow. "Who?" "Luna, my wife's best friend." My stomach dropped to the floor. Luna entered the room with a firm step, without looking at me. She took her place, and when asked to testify, she did so with a voice so clear that every word was a dagger. "My friend asked me to lie," she said. To tell her boyfriend that she had been a victim of rape, when in reality, she had voluntarily slept with her ex. I agreed out of fear, out of loyalty, because I thought it was a one-time thing, but it was the beginning of a chain of lies that destroyed everyone around her. My lawyer tried to object, said they were just words, without proof. And then Luna took out her phone, opened the chat, asked the judge to see it. Voice messages. Screenshots. My voice begging her, say I was raped. That's all I ask as a friend. I have no other choice. The judge listened to everything without changing his expression. Then he asked for a copy for the record. My lawyer lowered his head. The sentence didn't take long. Divorce granted. Child support denied. Savings fund divided. But furthermore, the judge ruled in favor of Andres in an additional lawsuit that his lawyer had presented with premeditation. Damages for emotional and financial deception based on false paternity. I, unexpectedly, had to return part of what he had spent on Matthias. Schools, insurance, gifts, all with invoices, all recorded, and in the end the public humiliation. Because the judge, in reading the resolution, ended with this phrase, the court recognizes that the plaintiff was a victim of severe emotional manipulation, including the fraudulent use of a narrative of sexual abuse to consolidate false paternity. Such conduct is not only ethically reprehensible, but legally punishable. Everything else was a murmur. I didn't hear anything else. When I left there, I had lost everything. Andres didn't look at me again, not even to say goodbye. Luna walked past me, held my gaze for a second. There was no hatred, only contempt, like someone stepping on something they never wanted to touch. And Matthias didn't know it yet, but soon he would, and then not even he would see me the same way. I don't know exactly when it happened, but one day Matthias stopped saying Mom with that light in his eyes. He started calling me with a dry voice. Sometimes he didn't even speak. He would lock himself in his room with drawings he no longer showed me. He drew Andres, he drew his dad with a smile, and I was no longer in the drawings. After the trial, I lost everything. Not just legally. I lost my name. The audio Luna presented as evidence, the one I naively believed would be sealed in a court file, was leaked. It went viral. Yes, that's me, crying, begging to cover up a lie, inventing a rape, building a story on the suffering of other women, just to keep a man I had already lost. Social media doesn't forgive. The calls stopped. My family turned their backs on me. My mother told me she couldn't have Matthias in her house listening to those things. I left alone. I had to move into a borrowed room with a mattress on the floor and take odd jobs. Whatever. A resume is useless when your name is trending for being the woman who faked a rape to trap a sterile man. The friendships I thought were loyal disappeared. Some blocked me, others, worse, left me on read. I couldn't go out on the street without feeling someone murmuring. At the supermarket, at school. That's her and Matthias. Oh, Matthias. One afternoon, he looked at me with eyes full of rage. He was only 5 years old, but he spoke like an adult. Dad doesn't love you because you lied. Don't say that, I told him, trembling. He does love me, but you lied to him. That's what it says online. I turned off his tablet, I yelled at him. I told him it was nonsense. He cried. He pushed me. He told me he wanted to live with his dad, and then I understood he no longer belonged to me. Andres sued me for custody. He didn't want full custody, but shared. He won. Now he sees him 3 days a week. Matthias comes back telling how they cook together, how he watches movies with him, how he goes to therapy, so he's not sad. He doesn't talk to me about anything, and I'm still here alone, judged, ruined. And the worst part, I still believe I didn't deserve such punishment. Yes, I lied, but I lied out of fear, out of love, out of not wanting to lose the only family I had built. Does that make me a monster? Was it that serious? Haven't all women done things to protect their children, their homes, their dreams? But no, for everyone I'm the manipulator, the narcissist, the one who destroyed an entire life just by not facing her own. And even though it hurts to say it, I think Andres won. He won freedom, he won public image, he won Matthias, and I was left with the silence. The worst of all, no longer having anyone who wants to hear my side.
Comment 1.
You faked a rape. Not only did you manipulate your partner, your friend, and your ex, but you also appropriated the real trauma that other women suffer. Do you have any idea what that means? People like you are the reason why there are victims who aren't believed. There's not enough punishment. You literally played with the empathy of a sterile person. You used your son as an emotional shield, and even today you still think you're the victim. Pathetic. Response. I never meant to mock the pain of other women. I know what I did, and I don't justify it. I was just afraid of losing the only good thing I had built. I made a mistake, but I didn't act out of hatred, but out of desperation.
Comment 2.
You're so intoxicated by your narrative that you don't see the gravity of what you did. Deceiving is one thing. Making him believe he was the father of a child that wasn't his, building an entire life on a lie, dragging him into a legal farce, and then still pretending to ask for child support. That's not just immoral, it's cruel. Response. I know. It was bigger than I could control. It wasn't premeditated. It was a chain of decisions I made out of fear. It hurts me that everything boils down to malice, when deep down, I was only trying to save what I loved.
Comment 3.
How serious was it? Yes, you deceived everyone, you lied, you faked abuse, you emotionally manipulated a child, and then you tried to force a man to pay for a child that wasn't his. I don't know how you keep justifying yourself. Comment 4. As a lawyer, I tell you this. The judge was kind. You could have faced criminal charges for defamation, fraud, and emotional falsification with financial consequences. That you only had to return the money is luck, not justice. Comment 5. The most terrifying thing isn't what you did, it's that you wrote all this and you still think you didn't do anything wrong. That moral blindness, that constant justification, that way of turning everything into poor me when you ruined 3 lives, that's what's scary. Response. It's not that I think I didn't do anything wrong. I know I made a mistake, but I also know that Matthias was loved, that Andres was happy. None of that is worth having lied at the beginning. Comment 6. You used your son as emotional bait. You recorded audios for him to manipulate his father. You didn't even protect him from the consequences of your actions. You threw him into the fire with you, and you expect him to grow up and call you mother with affection.
Comment 7.
Luna covered for you once, and you betrayed her in public. What did you expect? That a woman you forced to uphold a lie about rape would defend you when you destroyed her marriage? You dug your own grave. Response. I know. And I regret it. I shouldn't have talked about her that night. It was a stupid betrayal born of pride, but I didn't imagine it would destroy me that way. I still find it hard to believe.
Comment 8.
I don't know what hurts more, that you did what you did, or that at the end of it all you still right. I didn't do anything wrong, as if everyone else was wrong except you. If you can't feel empathy, at least learn to feel shame. Comment 9. You never loved your partner. Loving yourself was always the priority. You faked trauma, you destroyed lives, and now you cry about losing everything. What you lost was never really yours. You just stole it for a while. Comment 10. Do you know who the only real victim here is? Matthias, a child whose identity was built on a lie, who will grow up wondering if he was truly loved or just a product of manipulation. That child owes you nothing. Response. Matthias isn't a product of manipulation.
He's my son.
I raised him with real love. I protected him as best I could. Maybe I failed, but his love and his life weren't a farce. He's the only real thing I have left.